Welcome to the Faith and More podcast. This is a trans-denominational podcast. Everyone is welcome and safe here, no matter what your faith is or isn't. Hello, my name is Reverend Angel Wise, and I'll be your host. I am an ordained trans-denominational minister, director of Oblates Perpetual Light, a shamanic light worker specializing in intuitive, quantum, and angelic healing, a studying Kabbalist, and a life coach. I firmly believe that the divine works through people every day to help us. These angels and saints are so very humble, many of us don't know they exist or existed. Each week we'll explore the lives of these amazing beings. We will also explore topics that can help your faith, no matter what it is or isn't. The goal of this show is to inspire, encourage, educate, uplift, strengthen, and heal you and your faith. So, be sure to follow and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Bless you and enjoy the show. So before we begin, let us roll the disclaimers. The views and opinions expressed by the host, moi, are solely, which I mean that literally, mine. Any and all content provided is my opinion and is not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything. I always recommend that you, the listener, further investigate, contemplate, and meditate on everything that is shared. ISE's individual soul experiences will vary. Listening discretion is advised. Well, hello, everyone. How are you all doing? I so hope and pray, I really do, folks, that you are all well and blessed, or no matter what is going on in your life, you're able to see the light in the darkness. Please know that I am here for all of you. You all are in my heart, thoughts, and prayers. If you need specific or individual prayers, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Also, I offer healing sessions now, so I'll have an infomercial later on in the show for that. My contact information is at the end of the show and at the end of every show. Never hesitate to reach out to me, folks. I love to pray, and our Faith and More family of listeners love to pray as well. So let us pray for you. So we haven't showcased or talked about a mystic in a while, so Spirit presented one, and here he is. Show of hands, everyone who has heard of Reverend G. Vale, V-A-L-E, Owen, O-W-E-N, of Birmingham, England. Yeah, maybe a few. I didn't know until Spirit presented him to me. And let me explain a little bit about that, because I know some of you probably raise your eyebrows and maybe roll your eyes, if not say a few slanderous things every time I say Spirit this, Spirit that, Spirit blah, 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 blah. I am by no means a mystic, clairvoyant, an empath. By any means. I am merely a Padawan. I am merely an apprentice studying, and I'm becoming more and more open to Spirit communicating with me. And Spirit mainly does that through feeling as well as mental images. Very rarely is it actually words. So I'll get a feeling, or I'll get mental images, or an idea, and some could say, and you have every right to, hey, it's just an idea that your brain is making up. I would say, yeah, but then again, I say no, because I tend to know my brain quite well, having been an advocate of meditation for, 42, almost 50 years. So, yeah, it's been a while. So I tend to know my brain and my thoughts and my thought patterns quite well. It can't trick me anymore. So anyway, yeah, now watch, it's going to trick me. So anyway, I know that when something presents itself, that it's coming from Spirit, it's coming from light, it's coming from the Creator, it's coming from angels, guardians, guides, ancestors. So when I say Spirit, that's just a blanket label for all of that, for the creator, for spirit, for guardians, guides, higher self, angels, because I don't ask who they are, because I feel that if they want me to know specifically who they are, they'll let me know. And honestly, it really doesn't matter, because when, spirit at that level is spirit, it really doesn't have identity like we do here in the human form. It doesn't have ego. It doesn't have the I, me, and mine. So it's very serving and subservient. It's not anything where it's in it for itself. There's nothing in it for itself. It does what it does because it can, because it wants to help. So today's story is actually going to share some of that with all of us and expand on that a little bit more. So anyway, I didn't mean to ramble, but I just wanted to expand a bit, because you guys definitely now this season have heard me refer to spirit a lot, and it's just going to get more and more and more as I become more and more open to spirit and what spirit has to say and share. So again, spirit brought this person to my attention. And no, this one couldn't have come from my imagination, because I have never heard of them before. And it's really, really an interesting story and a most fascinating person. So again, his name is Reverend G. Vale Owen. He was born in Birmingham, England in 1869. He was educated at Midland Institute, and in 1893 ordained by the Bishop of Liverpool. He worked as a curate in several parishes in Liverpool until 1900, when he became Vicar of Orford. Now, all was seemingly and swimmingly well for Reverend Owen until his psychic abilities manifested after his mother's death in 1909. He began to receive communications via automatic writing from her in 1913. And automatic writing, for those of you who do not know, is when you just take a piece of paper or a pad, a notepad, and a pencil or pen or whatever writing stylus you prefer, and spirit communicates through your body, actually takes control of your hand and writes messages. And there are some really incredible mediums that are proficient in this. One of which immediately comes to mind is Cindy Kaza. Cindy Kaza is on so many shows right now on the Travel Channel and Discovery Channel. She's temporarily working, taking Amy Adams' place on the Dead Files show with Steve DeShavi. So, I mean, that's a great show if you ever want to check it out. My only beef is that just about everything they find is demonic, which I find that extremely hard to believe. But that's just me. That's just my personal opinion. So anyway, Cindy Kaza is one. It's a modern day automatic writing, clairvoyant and psychic. So again, out of nowhere, Reverend Owen just after his mother's death begins to start doing automatic writing, and it's actually his mother that is communicating through him. It says these impacted him so significantly that he converted to spiritualism, much to the dismay of his bishop. Oh, I'm sure. Church authorities, oh my, were unhappy, you think, with Owen's spiritual practices, and forced him out of his parish in 1922. At that point, he began to actively promote the religion and toured England and the United States. So those of you who don't know, historically, back in the early 1900s, spiritualism was huge. I mean, it was, off the charts. People, I guess because of the times, because of, the First World War, because of famines, plagues, all kinds of hardships, wanted to know what was going on in the afterlife and how they could connect with loved ones in the afterlife. And spiritualism filled that niche. But unfortunately, there were a lot of people posing as spiritualists, posing as psychics, posing as mediums that weren't. They were total frauds. If any of you are familiar with the great Harry Houdini, you'll know that a lot of his life was spent going around to these fake, mediums and psychics and spiritualists to defame them and to debunk them and prove them wrong. Again, he was using his mother as well because he was trying to communicate with his mother who passed away. And then, of course, again, those of you who know the great Harry Houdini's history know that after he passed, his wife would hold a yearly seance to try to communicate with him. And she also took up the cross, so to speak, and went around to debunk and defame those imposters because she and Harry had a specific code and system that if they made contact with him, he would say this or he would do that. And unfortunately, she never, ever found anyone that could prove that they were actually communicating from Harry Houdini. So that and a lot of other things, of course, because of the churches as well. They didn't like this, right? So they, all began to wage war on spiritualism and then eventually phased it out. Yes, spiritualism still exists today. There are some spiritualist churches still around, but it's nowhere near like it was back in the 1900s. So the messages Owen received were transcribed into articles for the Weekly Dispatch and then into a series of books during the 1920s, The Life Beyond the Veil. And that book is still available. It's actually 5 books, well, actually 7 books in one book, The Life Beyond the Veil. And I'll have a link to it as well as this article and another article that I'm going to be sharing in the show description for anyone that's interested. So, of course, there's 4 books initially: The Lowlands of Heaven, The Highlands of Heaven, The Ministry of Heaven, and Battalions of Heaven. And then the other book is Outlands of Heaven, which contains 2 books, The Children of Heaven and The Outlands of Heaven. The first entry in The Lowlands of Heaven is dated Tuesday, September 23rd, 1913. And I found an actual audio book of part of The Lowlands of Heaven. Why am I saying it that way? Lowlands of Heaven, not lowlands. Lowlands. The Lowlands of Heaven on YouTube. And I will have a link to that as well in the show description so you guys can have a listen to it. It's really, really fascinating. So his mother said that she lived in the first sphere of heaven. Okay, this is after her passing, where recently passed souls arrive. So this is where she says after we pass, this is where we all initially go to this first sphere of heaven, or first level. She described it as earth made perfect. The level does not have a 4th dimension, so there's only 3 dimensions, which made it difficult for her to describe adequately. But there are hills and rivers and beautiful forests and houses too. Her major concern was readying the place for the arrival of others. So she had a task, as everyone does in the heavens, in the different realms. When they pass, everyone, gets a job and has something to do as far as it helps them to work out whatever they weren't able to work out here in the physical, in the human, and it also helps them to ascend, to go to a higher level. And his mother actually talks about this in the Lowlands of Heaven. His mother went on to describe a series of crystal halls of different colors. They were places to study the effects of color on the physical world. She says, our environment is part of us, just as with you, and light is one component and an important one of our environment. Therefore, it is very powerful in its application under certain conditions, as we saw it in these halls. It's also cool because in the Lowlands of Heaven, his mother talks about how they all wear robes, but the robes are different colors depending on what their level is. It's not like ranks, but I guess you could say that. But it's really neat because she said that when they walk like outside, like in a garden, or no matter where they go, if the colors in this environment change, like if you walk through a garden of flowers, your robe instantly changes colors to that of the flowers or the trees or the grass or the buildings or anything like that. And she talks about ascending, about going to higher levels. And she was actually visited, she talks about this in the lowlands of heaven, visited by an angel one day, and the angel congratulated her on ascending to a higher level. And the angel and all the souls and spirits around her came and congratulated her and hugged and kissed her. And then the angel took her and they went to another realm, which was a higher realm. And in this higher realm, she was taken, the angel took her to this place called the House of Suffering. And that sounds pretty scary, right? If someone says, we're going to the House of Suffering, it's like, nah, I'll pass on that haunted house. I don't want nothing to do with that. But this was contrary to it. What it was the House of Suffering was a series of homes that were all together. Each house had its different level and its different task, but the spirits and souls that worked in those homes or those buildings were specifically to help suffering people in the human realm. So each one, she talks about how, it was difficult at first to learn how to do this, but as she kept going on and learning, it became very natural. It became very instinctual, to where she didn't have to think. She was able to connect with energies here on Earth and to help them with their suffering. And she said it's very difficult, which you can understand that, especially those who are counselors or psychologists or therapists, because of free will. They were very restricted, just as all of us are. We're restricted. We can't make or force somebody to do something, nor should we be able to. It has to be done in their own free will. And she was, and those other spirits and stuff are also very limited on what they could do. They're constantly communicating with energy and vibrations and light to the person to try to help them get through their suffering, get through their depression, get through their funk. So a lot of times they were successful, and of course, sometimes they weren't, because a lot of times we just aren't receptive to it. A lot of times, as we've talked about on this show, infinite times, especially in earlier seasons, the vast majority of the humans in this world operate on a, fight or flight, very animalistic level. There's the spiritual level is far and few between, and blessed those who listen to the show and are Faith and More family, because those of you are sincerely interested in spirituality and improving your spiritual practices and growing and ascending and evolving, whereas the majority of the people in the world sadly don't care. Only thing they care about is themselves, the I, me, and mine, which again is very primitive. It's very animalistic. It's very ego-driven. It's very I, me, and mine. So Reverend Owen's communication with his mother lasted until she ascended again. And at that time, the communications ended. But she didn't leave him hanging high and dry. She introduced him to a spirit guide by the name of Zabdiel, Zabdiel. And it says, Owen's description of the spirit world continued with communications from Zabdiel, a spirit who resided in the 10th level of heaven. Zabdiel made it clear that the numbering system for the levels of heaven is an artificial construction, but it is easily understood. Zabdiel's main occupation was helping others ascend. Zabdiel said, "For not until a man has learned to love all without hating any is he able to progress in this land where love means light. And those who do not love move in dim places where they love their way and often become so dull in mind and heart that their perception of the truth is as vague as that of outward things." Again, just as we were just talking about with, unfortunately, how so many people are so stuck in that, human fight or flight, ego, I, me, and my way of living, this is definitely not what we're here for. But you know what? Your media, all of that culture, community, sometimes even churches will push and preach that, you are to be subservient. Don't think for yourself. Let them think for you. Don't do what you want to do. Do what they tell you to do. And it just goes on. And that just leads you further and further away. And one other thing that his mother said that was really neat, was that the higher you go in the levels of heaven, the brighter the light is. And she said it's very difficult at first to adjust to that brightness of light, to that frequency, because of course, as you go higher, you're resonating on a higher frequency, which is very interesting stuff. So a new group of spirits came forward to present information in the Ministry of Heaven. That's the book. Their stories were similar to Zabdiel's. There was also an account of a mission down to the lower zone where they assisted those who undergoing intense suffering. Owen's writings impressed Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, a famous spiritualist at that time. When questioned about Owen's legitimacy, Conan Doyle wrote a letter to the editor of Light. He told people who thought Owen was just trying to make money that it is not sufficiently known that Mr. Owen refused to take any remuneration, oh, the language back in those days, for the script when it was published in Lord Northcliffe's paper. Also, that he worked without any profit for himself in America. Since then, he has had one long lecture tour in the provinces, which did much good, but which placed a great strain upon his health without any corresponding pecuniary return. Owen eventually became pastor of a spiritualist congregation in London. By that time, his financial resources were severely depleted. Conan Doyle organized a collection for him and created a trust fund that provided him financially support for the rest of his life. In 1931, Reverend Owen fell ill, probably exasperated by the strain of mediumship. He died in March of that year at the age of 61. So, of course, there were people that said he's a fraud, he's a fake, he's just doing this for the money. But as Sir Arthur Conan Doyle pointed out, look, I mean, the only money he's accepted is the money for his, going around and doing lectures and talks, his lecture tour. That's all the money he was, accepting from anyone. He never took it from anybody, even when he went to the United States, and went through a tour there and talked and lectured. He never took any money. So, again, as we see, later in life, he was financially just gone, depleted. Blessings to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who took up a collection and made a trust fund for him that, sustained him for the rest of his life. And unfortunately he died at the young age of 61. And, it is stated here that it was probably because he was exasperated due to the strain of mediumship. And mediumship can really deplete you. It takes a lot of energy. Those of you who've been listening to the show for any length of time know of my experiment with lucid dreaming and my spiritual efforts in lucid dreaming. And eventually it's going to evolve into out-of-body experiences, which is very similar to what Reverend Owen is talking about here as well. You do have to be very careful because it does take a toll on you physically. Anytime you do these spiritual things at this level, at the mystic level, and again, I'm not saying I'm this or I'm that. Believe me, I'm nothing. It's like, I'm way, way, way down here. I'm still the fertilizer trying to produce, some kind of seed that will grow. But again, I pray you get the understanding. Those of you who are psychics, empaths, mediums, do automatic writing. Anybody that does, that above and beyond spiritual, mystical stuff, know the toll that it can take on you physically. A lot of people end up getting sick. A lot of people end up dying at early ages because of this. So it's very, you have to be very careful at what you do, how you do it, the extent that you do it, and always make sure that you are protected. Your guardians, guides, your angels, the Creator are always there backing you.
We interrupt this program to bring you the following announcement.
show of hands, if an old man, and I'm pointing at myself here, who is obsessed and addicted to reading, studying, contemplation, you name it, on stories, books of all types of genres, told you that he, moi, pointing at myself again, just told you, which I'm telling you now, read the greatest story of his lifetime, would you be interested? Okay, if you're raising your hand, keep your hand up. The book is called Movie Score, a screenplay by Joey Andolini. I'll have a link in the show description. This is such an amazing, off-the-charts book. I cannot recommend it enough or say enough great things about it. Here's a very small synopsis of the book. Imagine having movie music to guide you through life. It happened to insignificant Dave and changed his course of his life. Now, I'm not going to give any spoilers, but this book is very much like what we talk about here on the show, about what happens to us or what can happen to us and our lives and all of those around us. How does it affect them? When we quiet our mind and focus on our heart and listen to our heart and spirit and just surrender to it and do what it says. This book covers that in spades. It is beyond incredible, but beyond fantastical, beyond phenomenal. And Joey is just a beyond incredible, amazingly talented writer. Now, this book is in screenplay format, which means it is ready to go into production for a movie. And Joey's working very hard at trying to make that happen. Now, once you read the book, I know you're going to be right by my side, screaming and yelling with your hands in the air, like you do care that this gets turned into a movie, because it would be a smash, a total and complete hit. So where can you get this amazing, truly amazing, fantastic book? It's available at Amazon.com and also Barnes & Noble Books. On Amazon, the paperback is $9.99. The Kindle version, which is digital, is $2.99. And if you have a Kindle subscription, Amazon shows that it is free. So, hey, you can't beat free, can you? And after you read the book, please, please, please go back to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or both, and leave a review on this book. It will help get it out to the public so more and more people can read it. More and more people can fall in love with it. More and more people can help support us and Joey in making this a movie. Also, one more thing and I'll shut up, I promise. Share this, please, folks. After you read it, I know you're going to want to. Share it with as many people as you possibly can. Tell them about it. Friends, relatives. Hey, we have the holidays coming up. Purchase the paperback. It would make an incredible, everlasting gift in someone's life. So that was the first article, which was just a brief bio on Reverend Owen. And I know a lot of you might be saying, well, he turned his back on God and Jesus, and that's why he was excommunicated from the church. And no, he was excommunicated from the church because he wasn't doing what they wanted done and believing in what they wanted him to believe. He wasn't walking the line that they drew on the ground in chalk and dared him to step off of. He remained very, very much a steadfast Christian. If anything, his Christianity grew even more because in his writings, he talks about God and Jesus a lot. I mean, a lot, folks. So those of you who may be poo-pooing on him or, saying that, he was excommunicated because of, doing devil practices or what have you. No, on the contrary, he was ascending to higher levels moment by moment with each communication that he received. And bless him for, doing the automatic writing and for keeping all of those conversations and for publishing them so people like us, all of these 100-something years later, can read this and study this and, kind of get a gist of what, the afterlife is. I'm sure, and I personally feel that it varies. Again, individual soul experience, the ISC varies from person to person. And that, the afterlife does as well. I believe it kind of fits whatever you're into or whatever you're evolving. It goes that way. He was very, much in the priesthood, so it molded to that. So, it speaks in your language and resonates, on your frequency. So I do have another article I would like to read, that is actually some of the writings from, the Life Beyond the Veil series. It says the following was written by Reverend G. Vale Owen concerning the scripts that he received from the realms of spirit, which make up the Life Beyond the Veil series. And what they mean by scripts is the things that he wrote down. That's what they're calling scripts, like you would a play or a movie or a screenplay. So he says, this script, transmitted by automatic or, more correctly, by inspirational writing, falls into 4 distinct sections, all, however, forming one progressive whole. It was all quite evidently planned out in advance by those who had its transmission in hand. The link between mother and son was, no doubt, considered the most likely avenue through which to open up communication in the first instance. It was my mother, therefore, and a band of friends who transmitted to me the first part. The experiment proving successful, another teacher was introduced, named Astriel, one of higher rank and of more philosophic mind and diction. The messages given by my mother's band and Astriel form the first book of the script, The Lowlands of Heaven. Having passed this test, I was handed over to Zabdiel, whose messages are on a higher level than the simple narrative of my mother. These form the highlands of heaven. The next phase was the ministry of heaven, given by one who called himself leader and his band. Subsequently, he seems to have assumed more or less sole control of communication. Then he speaks of himself as Arnold. Under this name, his narrative, which forms the 4th book, The Battalions of Heaven, is the climax of the whole. His messages are of a more intense nature than any of the foregoing, which were evidently preparatory. It will be obvious that in order to obtain the true perspective, the book should be read in sequence given above. Otherwise, some of the references in the later volumes to incidents narrated in earlier may not be quite clear. As to the personages concerned in the transmission of the messages, my mother passed into a higher life in 1909, age 63. Astriel was the headmaster of a school in Warwick in mid-18th century. Of Zabdiel's earth life, I know little or nothing certain. Arnell gives some account of himself in the text. Kathleen, who acted as amanuensis on the spirit side, lived in Anfield, Liverpool. She was a seamstress and died at the age of 28, about 3 years before my daughter Ruby, who is mentioned in the text, who passed over in 1896 at the age of 15 months. Next, he talks about how the messages came. There is an opinion abroad that the clergy are very credulous beings, but our training in the exercise of the critical faculty places us among the most hard to convince when any new truth is in question. It took a quarter of a century to convince me, 10 years, that spirit communication was a fact, and 15 that the fact was legitimate and good. See, so he wasn't like automatically believing this from the get-go. This is something that he really struggled with and really prayed on and just had to work through until it really started clicking. He continues, from the moment I had taken this decision, the answers began to appear. First, my wife developed the power of automatic writing. Then, through her, I received requests that I would sit quietly, pencil in hand, and take down any thoughts which seemed to come into my mind, projected there by some eternal personality, and not consequence on the exercise of my own mentality. Reluctance lasted a long time, but at last I felt that friends were at hand who wished very earnestly to speak with me. They did not overrule or compel my will in any way. That would have settled the matter at once, so far as I was concerned, but their wishes were made ever more plain. I felt at last that I ought to give them an opportunity, for I was impressed with the feeling that the influences was a good one. So, at last, very doubtfully, I decided to sit in my cassock in the vestry after evensong. The first 4 or 5 messages wandered aimlessly from one subject to another, but gradually the sentences began to take consecutive form. And at last I got some which were understandable. From that time, development kept pace with practice. When the whole series of messages was finished, I reckoned up and found that the speed had been maintained at an average of 24 words per minute. On 2 occasions only had I any idea what subject was to be treated. That was when the message had obviously been left uncompleted. At other times I had fully expected a certain subject to be taken, but on taking up my pencil, the stream of thought went off in an altogether different direction. So this is the way he was checking himself, is that, he would sit down with a, particular question or subject in mind and think that that was going to be what they were going to talk to him about. And most of the times they wouldn't. They would talk about something completely different. The effect of what perhaps we might term the more mechanical operations, as these impinge upon the organism of the human brain, the transmitters themselves describe in some detail. Vibrations initiated by them and projected through the veil find their target in the mentality of the human instrument and are reproduced on this side in what is, in effect, a kind of inner clairvoyance and clairaudience. That is, he sees these scenes in his imagination as he, by similar process, is able to visualize his garden or house or other well-known place when at a distance. The words of the messages seem to travel on a celestial, mundane, telephonic current. He can hear them interiorly in much the same manner as he is able to hum over a well-remembered tune, or to reproduce a speech he has heard with all its inflections and cadences, pathetic or uplifting. All this interiorly, and without himself uttering a sound. In addition, however, there is a deeper content in the operation. It is that effect upon the human instrument produced by the more or less intimate contact of spirit with spirit. This is actual spiritual communion, and is recognized in the creed of the Christendom, in the article, the communion of saints. So he's quoting here, that this, spirit communication is sanctioned in the creed by the church in the communion of saints, which, I'm not going to get into it, but it's interpreted different ways by different people for different reasons. It's always usually for self-gain, which is tragic, instead of, translated as Jesus would translate it, being no self, no pride, no ego, none of that. So, as he was saying here is that, yes, the physical is involved, but what it comes down to is the communication is his spirit or your spirit communicating with other spirits, communing with other spirits. So intimate and so perfect must be the sympathy of aim and affection existing between transmitter and receiver, that whenever any thought comes through which seems to be at variance with what is true, immediately a shock is felt and the instrument faces about, as it were, with a query in his mind, which on the part of the communicator is immediately observed and noted. And what he's referring to there is being able to check what is being communicated to you or through you by spirit when your mind pops up with something. And that's a difficult thing to do, especially for those who don't have a very good mastery of the mind. It can get really messy and really muddy really quick. So that, my dear brothers and sisters, are the 2 articles. No, I do not have the book. yet with the 5 books in it, but I am working through the Lowlands of Heaven, which is the audiobook that is on YouTube, excuse me, and I will have a link to that, and I highly recommend it. It is such an amazing, just listening to it, because it just, at least for me, it checks all the boxes. It really does jive with what I feel in my heart as far as what heaven or the heavens is like, or is close to what, a human can describe. And now, again, I don't have the Life Beyond the Veil, which is the book of all the books. You have that on my wish list and on Amazon, and eventually I will definitely get it, because this is very fascinating. I would love to learn and read more about Reverend Owen, and just, wow, what an amazing being. And again, a shame that we don't know more about him and hear more about him, and that he's not, a familiar thing in our thoughts, something that we have previously studied or heard of. But as we know, with the majority of the people we showcase here on the show, very few of us have ever heard of him. And again, don't think that, he is, going against God or Jesus or anything like that, because he definitely was not. He was definitely all into it. And I mean, other saints did just what he did, as far as on a psychic level. It may not have been automatic writing, but there are saints who wrote down what Jesus had told them, and premonitions, and what the Holy Mother told them as far as, predictions for the future. Saint Faustina, Saint Therese, Thomas Merton, so many of the mystics, Saint John of the Cross, Saint Hildegard of Bingen. I could go on and on and on. All of these saints, all of them were operating on a high spiritual frequency, which can be interpreted or spoken of as a psychic frequency or an empathic frequency. So again, I so hope and pray that you all have enjoyed this show, and that you give Reverend Owen a chance and check out his work. If anything, just give the YouTube audio book, the Lowlands of Heaven, a listen, because it's very short, but it is just very powerful, and it's absolutely free. The Oblates of Perpetual Light is the first of its kind. We are the very first group of Oblates to fully utilize the internet to organize and communicate. This allows everyone and anyone to join from all over the world. The Oblates of Perpetual Light are inclusive, meaning everyone is welcome regardless of their beliefs, faith, identification, gender, sexual preference, etc. We are independent, meaning that we are not affiliated with any church other than being connected with the Faith and More ministries, and we are trans-denominational. We are not affiliated with any one religion. We greatly respect the beliefs and freedoms of others. We are all children of the universe. Only 4 things are required of any oblate of perpetual light. The first, study and contemplate some sacred text of your faith at least once a day. It's up to you how much you study and contemplate. It can be as little as a sentence or as much as you wish. You choose when, where, and how long. Number 2 is prayer. Prayer is key in the heart of the Oblate's Perpetual Light. It is imperative that an oblate pray sometime during the day or night. Again, this is up to you to choose when, where, and for how long. The Oblates will gather together online, typically Zoom, at least once a month. There is also a Facebook group where Oblates can meet and commune more often if they choose. There are Oblates who are very social, and there are Oblates who are very private. All are respected. If you are more private and or ascetic, you will need to keep in contact with the Director of Oblates, moi, privately. Number 4. Love and respect all members, regardless of their faith. We are here as a group, not just as individuals. Everyone's faith, beliefs, views, etc. will be respected. Bullying, hate, attacks, and etc. will not be tolerated. If this all sounds kosher and great to you, and you would like to become a member of the Oblates Perpetual Light, please contact me, our director, at oblates.pl@gmail.com. Again, that's oblates, oblates.pl@gmail.com. I hope to see you as an oblate very soon. This week's prayer request and updates are as follows. First, I want to start with Jamie. We mentioned her last week. She has a very rare form of leukemia. I received an update from her mother-in-law, Denise, who was very elated to say that they caught this rare form of leukemia very early. The reason they gave her a 5-year life expectancy last week when she was diagnosed is because when most people are diagnosed with it, it's already at a degree that's beyond treatable. Hers is very treatable, and she's in the hospital, and she's going to be in the hospital for at least a month or 2. So please, please, please keep those prayers going for her. Also, Bill's surgery went fairly well this week. He had a tumor behind his left ear. They had to cut into his skull, and when they did, they found that the tumor was infected, and part of the infection had eaten away part of his skull, so they had to do some reconstruction. He's recovering now, but having problems with blood pressure, so please keep him and his wife Joanna in your heart, thoughts, and prayers. Also, please keep Haven, Kayla, Terry, Denise, Stephanie, Katie, Sarah, Kia, Elaine and Bob, Clyde, Lisa and her family, Lana, Megan, Molly, Gwen, Octavia, Trish, Chad and their family, Bishop Beckley and his family, Brother Abel, Mike S., Kelly and their family, Michael W., Shelley and their family, Tanya and her family, Cheryl, Father Mike, Eddie and Eddie's mother Becky, Emma, Jean, Kathy, Tony and their family, Kyra and her family, Jan, James and Linda, Jill and her family, and Kimberly, Alicia, and Brendan. Oh, and one more, Joey Andolini and his family. And now our closing prayer and blessing. Let us pray. O great Creator, we humbly come before you with great gratitude and love. Help us to see that even when we perceive suffering, that we also, or more so, perceive blessings. Help us to see that each challenge before us is a challenge put there by you for us to overcome. So we become closer, can become even more close to you and receive your light, the light that you want so desperately to bestow upon us. Help us to get to the levels where we can receive more and more of your light, so that we may not only help ourselves, but more so help our loved ones and all of those that we come in contact with. Please help today's show to resonate within our hearts and minds, and help us to digest everything that we learned, so again, that we can not only put it into practice into every facet of our life, but also so we can help those we love and those we come in contact with. We ask this in your name, O great Creator, who is beyond all labels and all names. Amen. I so hope and pray you've enjoyed the show and that you found everything that you're searching for and more here with us. Stop by anytime, all the time. You are family. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with as many people as possible. Subscribe, rate, and review. And if you really enjoyed the show, please consider making an offering. Offerings are a great way to help sustain and improve the show and the Faith and More ministry. Offerings can be made through Patreon at patreon.com. That's Patreon, patreon.com/Faith and More podcast. Next is prayers. I love to pray, and our Faith and More family love to pray as well. So let us pray for you. You can email me directly at faithandmorepodcast@gmail.com. I am also offering healing sessions now that involve angelic, intuitive, and quantum healing. This is done via phone or Zoom. Due to the scope energy, and time involved in this type of healing, there is a minimum donation required. Please contact me for more information at faithandmorepodcast@gmail.com. Also, please don't forget about our YouTube channel. There's lots of great videos there, and it gives you more of an immersive experience. Just go to youtube.com/@faithandmorepodcast. So until next time, have a most blessed week, and know that each and every one of you are in my heart and prayers. Bless you.